and look at the continent, is around 5% on average. Around the world, the whole world is around 3%, and you are growing at 7%, which is very, very tremendous. But then there's issue about growth, which of course we will have to deal with it, because it's not just about the numbers, 7% GDP and so what, you understand? You need to make sure that these numbers are very, very meaningful in the lives of the people. So how do we ensure that? That's what we call inclusive growth. So we make sure that the production sector and the distribution sector involve a lot of people. With that, they can talk about economic growth and can make meaning of all these numbers that we are seeing. Because you look at the sector, because GDP growth being supported by the oil revenue and other stuff, you can look at that sector and see the number of people who are involved there are very, very few. You understand? So these growth do not make, most of the time, do not make meaning in the lives of the people. But let's not be fast to say that these are meaningless, because when you look at economic growth and economic transformation, it has to be for a very long period of time. So if Ghana, fortunately, we are able to sustain this growth, about 7%, 6% on the average for a decade or two, then we can make this vivid conclusion that if, as at then, still a lot of people are in the poverty line, then we say that the growth is meaningless. But until then, I think that we should focus more on the growth and know that indeed, sometime to come, things will be better.
Okay.
Yeah.
I know usually you also undertake a lot of business intelligence reports, and it is important that whatever variables that are reported annually per the performance of the economy, and those indicators tend to give some level of confidence for the investor community. Is it enough for us to say we're attracting a lot of investment? Let's say over the last 3, 4, 5 years, we've attracted a lot of direct investment. But at the end of the day, when we tend to have some of these imbalances in the economy as a result of perhaps our currency not doing very well as far as sustainability against the major currencies.
Yeah, I think that's very true. A lot of foreign direct investment are coming to the country, not only in Ghana, but I do most of my analysis on sub-Saharan African region, because look at this is a new virgin market where a lot of people have identified and know that indeed, if I should take my money to other continents, other regions across the world, if I'm making 3% interest on my investment, when I come to sub-Saharan Africa, especially including Ghana, I'm making about 10%, 12% on my money. So what do? I need to switch. They are diversifying. They are coming to the continent. They are coming to Africa to invest. So indeed, a lot of foreign direct investors are coming. But you see, that's why I think most of people have raised issue about the governor and the ministers' new regulation by the managers here concerning this CD depreciation, because this is what I term economic leverage. Okay, you call it economic leverage. What it means is that now I know that when somebody takes his or her money to other region, the person is going to make 3%. But when you bring your money into my economy, you're going to make 10%. So what do? Now is the time for me to implement whatever policy I have on paper. Because a lot of these policies are already on paper. Just that the implementation of it and the enforcement of it has become
problems.
You understand? You are not able to enforce it because your hands are tied. Let's go back to some 1960s, 1970s. These were a time that most countries in Africa were coming from colonial rule. So you see that most of the countries are very fragmented, very, very fragile. We're not system in place. We're very not strong enough to be able to generate our own form of money. So internally, you can't even generate 1 million to even support your budget or anything. So all you have to do is open your arms. Whatever these people out there say, you have to take it. But what do we see now? A different story being told. We can see the growth going, not as is happening in that part of the world. So this is the time you need to leverage. So the next 10 years, the next 5 years, if we really want to overcome some of these challenges, let me tell you, the foreign direct investors are coming. I had a chance to meet a lot of investors. Last week I was in some investors from UK, US, India. They were here in Ghana. They wanted to invest. So these people are saying that no matter how they are going to bring their money to this part of the world. So this is the time that managers of the economy should make sure that whatever policy they have on paper should be enforced. And I think I will come back to that.
Now, we'll talk about how crucial it is for us to make sure that whatever these measures we're implementing will not only be short-term, but we're going to go the long haul by implementing very long-term measures. And we know that we have huge trade imbalances because we do a lot more exports, a lot more imports than we do a lot more of exports. But as far as we're concerned, even though investments are coming in, what explanation then would we give to the fact that, well, we have a lot more investments coming in, but our CD is not as strong as it should be against the major trading currencies, particularly the US dollar? What can explain that?
Yeah, I think that most of the measures that we are seeing now are demand-driven. What I mean is that, currency depreciation is a two-way affair. I'm demanding, you're supplying. If you supply more, no matter how much I demand, you'll still be at where you are. You can maintain your stability, or even there's fluctuation, you'll be in and like up and down stuff, you understand? So the currency will go up and it come down. So that's normal, that's currency fluctuation. But when there's that trend of always going down, for as we've seen over the last 1 month, then there's a problem. Okay, but so like I said, all the measures are demand driven. So we have to look at the supplies. How do we get the supply of this currency that we are talking, the foreign currency, the pound, the dollar, the euros? You understand? That's what a lot of people have talked about. I think there's so many news on it, talking about increasing your exports and then minimizing your import. But you see, a lot of people also forget to actually analyze into detail what they mean by saying that, reduce on your imports. How do you reduce imports? You understand? There's development going on. These monies are coming. This money come, they fund projects. If all this high office building that we are seeing, all these
other investments that we have in oil, we have in agriculture, in real estate, etc.
You understand? All this money comes in. They are coming to invest. They need things to be able to help them in their investment. The money will not just come and sit in the bank. If we are constructing something, we need something to be able to, as equipment, to be able to construct that thing. You understand? So if there's no measure in place to make sure that indeed, let's take this office building, for instance, that we are seeeing, this
the high-rise buildings and the other sectors of real estate.
Most of them are glassed. You understand?
And they are imported.
They are imported.
So they bring the money in, they still have to take raw materials from outside.
You understand? So unless, and so a lot of people talk about this manufacturing thing, then Ghana should actually improve on their manufacturing. What are you going to manufacture?
Okay.
Unless you know exactly what you're going to manufacture.
Okay, so let's try, because I've always, I love this very explanation you're giving me, very basic.
Yeah.
Now, basic. So it means that people bring in a lot more foreign exchange, come and invest, but the point is that the raw material base of the country is still very raw. And so they would need some level of secondary goods for which they would need to use to undertake their investment. As a result of that, these very secondary goods are still imported. And so we're back to the cycle.
Back to the same.
So how do we bridge it then?
Yeah, that's why the first thing we need to do is actually look at the trend. Where does the money that comes in goes? You understand? A lot, of course, it goes to a lot of sectors, but then some of the sectors are very, very critical. Some of the sectors you can see that money are going there very, very hugely.
Like which sectors? If
you this real estate sector, for instance, a lot of money are coming in there. I was just overseeing a project.
Petroleum too.
Yeah, petroleum too. You understand? So a lot of money are coming to this sector. So that is where we need to focus on our manufacturing sectors. You understand? So we see that no, on this sector, these are the very things that they need. Of course, we have the numbers. We know the number of items that are being imported. I think they have the list of the huge imports into the country. They know, they have the numbers. So let's say this month the item that was imported most maybe is newspapers. They know the numbers are there. So going forward, what are the strategic plans we put in place? Now, how do you even enforce that maybe produce maybe rice? Let's look at this big hotel that we have in this country. You go there, all the food that they prepare are from material from outside. We produce rice in Ghana, but they import rice. You understand? A friend of mine was in Lagos about a week ago. When you go to a hotel, big hotels, they cook Nigerian rice. They don't import. But we know the amount of money we spend on importing this rice into the country. So how do you even go to the policies are there? Of course, they know that they are not supposed to import maybe rice from outside to prepare in their hotels. But how do you even enforce that? That is what I'll come back to my economic leverage. Because you see, these hotel managers, these people who fund the hotel, big hotels that are being constructed in the country, they know that when they bring their money into the country, they will make a lot of money on it, rather than taking to other regions. So what do you do now? I know that no matter what policy that I implement or enforce, you will bring your money into the country. You understand? So this is the time that we should be able to stand on our policies and say that indeed if we want to establish a hotel in this country, then please, the raw material you're going to use to prepare whatever you want to prepare for your people must come from this country. You can enforce that because you know that no matter what, this person's money will still be in the country. Because you take your money elsewhere, no matter what, you cannot make the returns as you will make in this country. That's what
being in the current geopolitical world in which we're very dependent on more external advanced economies and whatever perhaps monetary assistance they give us, etc., do you think we have the guts as a country to take those very policy decisions? Unlike Nigeria, which has the population, they are one of the leading producers of oil in the world, and so they have perhaps the clout as a country to take those decisions.
I think we can, and we can. We should. Actually, we should do that, because right now, as I started by saying, what we are seeing in Ghana and in many parts of Africa are not the same as it was some years back, that we were supposed to compulsorily follow some of the measures that have been put on us by these external people. You understand? Of course, we are not isolated. We are all integrated financially because look at the globalization. As we all know, we are all integrated into the global economy. So a lot of big countries are there, big economies are there. Whatever decision that you take affect us. But you see, when you depend most of the time on these people, that's where you always have a challenge. But now I think the story is different. We should be able to stand on our toes and say, no, because of this number, because of that I'm seeing in my economy, I think I should be able to stand on my ground.
Okay. If you take the investment report, let's say from the Ghana Investment Promotion Center, oil seems to be one of the leading areas. We have real estate. Yeah. We also have basic imports. And so, yes, impacts. Yeah. Now, how do we stop, let's say, over the several thousands of metric tons of rice that is imported into this country and consumed basically by households and the larger tourism or hospitality centers we have around?
Yeah, I think that's a good question because you realize that, like I started by saying, when you go to these big hotels, they import rice into the country. So you are saying that...
That is not exemplified in a sub-regional country like Nigeria, you were saying.
Yeah, so let's say you go to, you issue a policy direction that indeed from now onwards, no hotel should import rice. I'll ask you a question. So where do I get the rice from? Do you have the rice there for me to buy, to prepare? Because I have to provide service to my people. You understand? And if the rice are there, what is the cost of the rice? Obviously, the cost of production of rice in Thailand will be lower than the cost of production of rice in this country. So obviously, the price of rice in Ghana will go up, will be higher than the rice from Thailand, even
that
after all. That's the short term. That is now. So if you are supposed to issue a policy direction, that's what. So these hotel managers are going to face this challenge because you have to buy at a very high price on the Ghanaian market as against importing very cheaply from Thailand or any.
And then in place there, what do the policy makers do?
So this is what you do. This is what in my simple opinion, this is what I think you should do. So now the government or the manager to come will try to make sure that no. So how do we make sure that the cost of producing rice in this country, because that's going to be our focus for this medium term. So in the next 5 years, in the next 10 years, that should be our focus because you know that the number of import of rice into the country is very, very huge. So we are going to make sure that we follow through this project. So what do we do? Now you ask the question, how do we make sure that the cost of production of this oil, this rice is very, very cheap as compared to others? Because when you go to the banks now, I think the rate is very, very high. So if I'm a rice producer and I go to the bank for a loan, obviously that's where I'll go for my loan. I'm paying around 24%, 28%, 27%. My fellow rice producer in Thailand will go for a loan at 3%. So obviously my cost of producing rice will be higher than that of Thailand. So what do you do? There are so many things that we can do. First, look at this fund that we all see around. I think we have infrastructure fund, we have entrepreneurship, we have a small and medium fund, a lot of fund. You understand? These are funds specifically targeting specific projects. So we make sure that the cost of this money is very, very less compared to the commercial cost of money. So when you go to the bank, you are borrowing at 25%. When you go to Ghana Infrastructure Fund, you are borrowing at, let's say, 10% or 7%. So why don't we do that to this very, very critical sector that we think is hurting our economy? So you understand? So let's say rice fund. So if a bank wants to provide loan to its farmers who work with them, who bank with them, you go to the central bank or wherever this fund is. You assess that money into your bank. That is, you're not going to mix that one with your commercial loan.
Of course.
So when anybody comes in,
like they do for EDIF and the others.
Yeah, you understand. So if you come with your project on rice production, you come and assess and know that now this is the project that you want to do. This is the amount of rice you want to produce. This that. Then you assess the fund at a very cheap rate.
So instead of the normal commercial rates for the banks going at, let's say 27, 28, 29, as we're likely to see in the next few months. So by the end of the year, a rice farmer in Ghana or a rice company in Ghana, growing company in Ghana, will be in a position to access a certain facility at a rate, let's say 10%.
Yeah, that is it. And this must be a conscious effort. It shouldn't be like we are just talking about it. It should be a conscious effort like we are doing to the other sectors.
Okay, so by you saying conscious effort, you mean it should be something that there's a commitment?
Yeah, there's a commitment. We think it's good for us. That's why we want to do it. You understand? It's only when you see that thing happening that's when you can talk about this issue.
You have been doing a lot more of the intelligence report. Now, how does a government that is in power for 4 years, all right?
Yeah.
And we're talking the government is already in its second year in the term.
Yeah. So
how do they take such a policy when they know that perhaps the maturation of such a policy will be by 2016? And you know that by 2016, that's when we're likely to see the positive effects of the policy. And the voters will judge me by that. So why don't I go for a quick fix one?
I think there's more policies than economics. But
because the point is that in the remit of economics, we don't have to. It's not devoid of politics.
Obviously, I don't think we have to have the mindset we elect our government because we think that they are going to end their term in the next 4 years. I think some of us, we think that there should be more pragmatism in place. We should be more focused into the future, you understand? Because you can't just say that because I'll be in power for the next 4 years, whatever decision I take. Some of the things that we are talking about, all these funds, all these things that we are talking about will have to be effective in the next 5 years, in the next 7 years, in the next 10, which any government or this existing government will still be in power, you understand? So I think that the managers of the economy, these finance ministers, I think they know that some of the decisions they will take will have to be effective in the next few years, in the next 5 years, which they might or might not be in government. So I think that's obvious. They know, but we still have to take some of these decisions to move forward as a country.
Okay, so then we identify the critical areas. But these policies are implemented. You make sure that tariffs on imported products, let's say rice, etc., and the other consumables that we have are high. So it dissuades or discourages people from importing a lot more. Yeah. Then once the demand is high, you're saying that these funds should be available so that there could be access for development of those critical sectors. In the meantime, before those sectors develop, what happens then? Prices will be high.
Obviously, I think that's why I'm saying that all these measures that we are seeing are demand-driven. They are trying to look at how we be able to discourage people from demanding this foreign currency. That's what we are seeing. But the supply side is what I'm talking about here. Because if the money that they bring to invest in the country, it means they are supplying money, they are supplying foreign currency. Of course, there are other means, not from their side. I think that when we look at our commodities, we are a commodity-driven economy. We export most of our commodities in raw form, which is not good, of course. But that's where most of our supply also come in, supply of foreign currency, because as we send goods out there, we make a lot of money. I think we've been also affected by this fall in the price of gold on the international market. I think last year, just 2013, ended around 1,140 something, 1,400 something US dollar per ounce, but now it's around 1,200 something. You've lost a lot of money on the gold side, and cocoa too is not being strong on the commodity market. So a lot of things will also happen there. So the supply side is not being strong, but in the meantime, I think these measures should help, and it can be in for a very long time. Although it's going to hurt a lot of people because look at the interest rate increment that we are all seeing. Increase the bank rate to 18%. Obviously, at 60%, people were borrowing at a very, very astronomical level, and now it's 18%. You can see a lot of the cost of borrowing actually is going to go up. The interest that people are going to pay is going to go up. But how do this have effect on the economy? Of course, we are all aware of it. It means that people's confidence in the city is going to go up. People want to save in the city than to take their money elsewhere. So the supply will start coming in. For sure. Let's hope that it works. That's what I'm saying.
Okay. For example, if you take the Ghana Investment Promotion Center report for 2013, we have building and construction taking in excess of 143 billion cedis, so to speak, $1 billion, $1 million in investments. Yeah. And these estimates are the highest we have for building and construction. Yeah. So if we want to make a policy in that very sector, what do? We establish a glass glazing factory?
Of course.
Because we know that many of the constructions they are doing in Ghana, high-rise buildings, etc., they have glass blazing facilities that they use. Obviously, these are imported. They are not made locally. Obviously, they use a lot of aluminium. These are imported. And even the local clinker and things that we use in cement are also imported. Yeah.
Obviously, these are some of the things that you base on to actually initiate a policy and implement it. You look at your sector, you look at the trend of growth in the economy, you look at where, like you said, construction sector, about 1 point something billion, 14 point something or 1 point something billion.
Yes, 1.4.
$1.4 billion. So it means that this sector, so now it's not just in the short term. Can you make the projection? Of course, they have the numbers, they have the data. to be able to make the projection in the next 2 years, in the next 5 years, the next 10 years. This amount of money that we are talking about could shoot up to as high as maybe 10 billion or what have you. So it means that the economy will be hurt. Even 1.4 billion, we have been hurt. You understand? So based on that, you should be able to make projection. And then look at not just the figure, not just the 1.4 billion. Most of the items there, trust me, you cannot produce them in the next 10 years or so. It has to be some years back. You understand? But some of the items in there, of course, there are components of it. You can break it down and know that out of the $1.4 billion that we are seeing, maybe 60 million went to this production, the import of this kind of good, and this we can do in the next 4 years and the next 5 years. Of course, that's when you take that decision to make sure that in the next 5 years, in as much as you are importing, so you take some measures to hold your currency within this period, but to make sure that in the next 4 years and the next 5 years, this production, the production of this as a substitute for this import must be in place. Then you move on. So I think the numbers, these things are the things that we base on to make our projection, to make our forecast and know in the next 10 years, we are going to need about 10 billion to import these same 1.4 billion goods that we are importing. So what do I do now? You take that decision. You not just take the decision, how to enforce it. You make sure that there are measures in place to be able to enforce this decision. You understand? So I think that's how we take it from there.
In Africa, the CD and the rand of South Africa are the poorest performing currencies currently. But unlike South Africa, where the growth is between 2 to 3% over the last fiscal period in 2013, Ghana's has been in excess of 6%.
Yeah.
Okay. Does it mean that we're going to have a lot more foreign direct investment because this is now a fertile ground, because the investment will be good? You bring a few dollars, you get a lot more cities.
Obviously, yes. Your economic performance actually shows the confidence in investors all around the world. That they see your economic performance.
So you're saying that investor confidence necessarily will not dip?
Will not dip. They'll bring their money. Because, trust me, the numbers are there. When I look through the numbers across the world, I do a lot of country-by-country analysis. When I look at the numbers, Africa, Sub-Saharan Africa, Ghana especially, we are growing at a rate that has not been seen in the last decade. That's the fact. You can see the numbers there. So this, any investor that you talk to them, they know this is a country, this is where I can bring money, I can make money on it. Because I take my money elsewhere, I'm not going to make the return that I'll make in Ghana. So that story is there. You cannot defeat that fact. So it is there. So it's true. The money will come in. But that's why I also talk about the economic leverage that I've been talking about. You understand? So this is the time that you can, as a government and managers of economy, you can take tough decisions to enforce whatever you want to enforce on investment. Because no matter what the money coming. And this money that comes in is not only about the numbers. You talk about political stability as well. There are a number of factors that drive investment into your country. Political stability as well. So Ghana is politically stable. We went through a lot of elections over the period and we are still strong. So with that, we are ahead of so many countries in Africa. So these investors want to put their money in this country. And look, Ghana is more of the Swiss of Europe. That's how I say it. If you want to enter
like Switzerland of Europe.
If you want to enter any country,
how did you come by that conclusion?
Yeah. If you want to enter any country in Sub-Saharan Africa, especially the Acquah region, the best place for you to start from is Ghana. Why do I say that? Look at our people. Look at the skills that we have in the country compared to now. Look at the rising middle class. They consume, they buy. You understand? So whatever you produce here will be bought. Look at our growth. Look at our political stability. So when I'm in Ghana, I start from Ghana. I can penetrate to other Anglophone and Francophone West African countries. So managers of the economy, I think they know this. So this is where I will sit in my office and know that, no, I can see this and that are in my favor. So because of that, I can take some tough decisions. That's why we need the bold decisions to be taken. So that's how I say it.
Okay, you and your team, you undertake a lot of business intelligence reports. And so you are very much apprised with whatever the variables or the figures are country-wide. Now, all the noise you keep hearing on radio and the other criticism that has been leveled on those who criticize, let's say, policies taken by the Bank of Ghana, the comments from government people who manage the economy, etc., that perhaps they are creating panic. Is that true?
No, not really. But I think, like I started by saying, before you can make any comment on any policy direction, I think you should know where we are and appreciate the current trend before you can make any comment on it. You shouldn't be hasty to make any decision or any comment as you like, because obviously panic in the system also trigger economic shock. It can cause so many havoc.
How does panic, let's say we have panic in the system, what does it do? Does it bring investor confidence down, or perhaps in country people's confidence are low, and so the local investments that are in are mopped up or shot up somehow?
Yeah. I think lack of confidence in the system it's also part of currency depreciation. Your currency can depreciate easily because the money will not even come in. You understand? So lack of confidence is part of what I say that foreign direct investment will go down because a lot of people do not have confidence. So let's say people start by saying that the political climate in Ghana is not good. There could be war, there could be conflict here.
Yes. We're not talking in this instant that.
Yeah.
But the panic we are creating economically, that's what.
Yeah, of course, that one has a negative effect on investment. A lot of people will have to stay back and see what happens next before they will bring their money in. So I think it's something that we should look at. Yeah.
Okay. But in this instance, you're saying that we even though we're having all these hue and cry across the media space, we'll still have a lot more FDIs.
Yeah, of course. Okay. Like I say, that assessment is based on the fact that the numbers are actually in favor of us. I started by talking about GDP. I started by talking about the rising middle class. Talk about
so it's not so gloom. It's not so bad.
Yeah, it's not so gloom like as people put it, but of course the CD is something that we should look at, but it's not all gloom because I look at a number of factors. That's why I'm saying that I need to appreciate a lot of things before I can make my comment on it. I need to make sure it's not only on the CD that I can make my comment, I can make conclusion that because of the CD depreciation everything is bad as that. No, I can't do that. I need to look at a number of factors. That's what I do. So these are numbers that I'm seeing. These are the factors that I'm seeing. Economy is not driven by only one thing. It's not driven by only a currency. No, a number of factors you should factor in before you can make your concrete. So if you take like DRC, for instance, democratic problem, it's a failed state. Having a GDP around $386 as against Ghana's of $1,500,600 GDP per capita. If they are getting 386, so I can because of this factor.
Our currency may be a worse performing currency,
but the other factors,
comparison. But we do better than we're doing far better. Far better than that's for the example the DRC.
Yeah. So with that, I can't just say that Ghana is too bad that we can't even exist. You know, I need to look at a number of factors before I can make that conclusion. That's what a lot of people are not seeing. A lot of people are not appreciating. So that's why I say it. Because even as the city is depreciating, I think there are a number of factors. I think the finance minister, even a roundtable discussion, talked about some of this resilient economy and other stuff. But like I started by saying, a lot of people have issue with these numbers that we are saying. But I think it takes time. It takes sustainability of growth. Let's grow for about 6-7% for the next decade, and we see how this trigger down to the common man on the street.
So consistency in growth
is very, very important.
Now let's look at the policy direction of the Bank of Ghana now, particularly its own stern and firm hand on who opens a foreign currency account, who operates a foreign account, etc.
Yeah.
How does that engender the needed stability we have for, or we will need for the city?
Yeah, I think that measure particularly is more of demand-driven, trying to discourage people from demanding more of the foreign currency than the local one. So we say that you can operate a foreign account or foreign. I think that's a problem though, but I think I will take it from one side and try to move on from there. What you do is that, let's say people want to open a foreign currency account. You can't discourage people from opening that foreign currency or exchange currency account or foreign currency account. You can't actually, it's not good to discourage people from opening such account because at the opening that account, they deposit in foreign currency, which is something that we need, you understand? But demanding the dollar, demanding the foreign currency, as you say, the dollar, I think the euro, the pound are all affecting us. Demand the foreign currency to actually do a lot of internal transaction. That's what is very bad. So unless you're able to provide concrete documentation to whatever you're demanding the money for. I think the purpose is for traveling. I think it's for only traveling also, or transportation or something. That's when you can demand, and even not above $10,000 or so.
Not only necessarily traveling. You want to undertake business.
But you can do that, but not. But make sure that internally you do not actually use a lot of the foreign currency in your transaction. I think that is good. So it means that you're going to discourage people from actually having access to this foreign currency, and that is for the intern. That's what's normally done. You look through economic books, whatever you are. Practically, that's how it's done. You try to discourage people from demanding, but to actually ensure that there is a supply. Because if you are stopping me from demanding,
so you why can't the criticism?
Yeah, the thing is that you can't just. What people are not seeing is that I think that where we are now, I think a lot of people will say that you can't just stop me from demanding the dollar because I need to buy things, I need to import things. You understand? I need to do a lot of business on it, which I know that for sure I can't get those services in Ghana, and through that I need to use that foreign whatever I'm transacting.
And so those restrictions
Yeah. So you see that if I want to transact with somebody in the US or whatever, I need the dollars. and maybe the service that I'm supposed to get from that person will not be available in Ghana. I think that's where a lot of people are basing the argument on. So,
well, according to the policy, if you are somebody who you have a dollar account, you are known to be involved in some level of commerce, import and export with foreign partners, or you trade in foreign currency, etc., you are allowed to do your
I think there's a provision for that. Yeah, you are allowed to do that.
And that has always been in the law, right?
Yeah, it has been in the law. So the enforcement is always the case, you understand? But I think the foreign exchange account and the foreign currency account, that's where a lot of people have raised issue. But what I'm trying to say that there shouldn't be that discouragement of people opening that account. But, using that account to do your internal trade, that's where you need to provide concrete documentation, whatever you want to use your money for. That's when enforcement should come. But you can't, I think that it's not good. It's not healthy, economically healthy to actually restrict people from opening that foreign currency account, because when they do, they are going to deposit foreign currency in it. So let's say I open a foreign currency account with a bank, and I come to you, you've provided me documentation, I've signed, I've agreed to put my dollars in your bank. I come for the money, you tell me I can't have access to my account. I think it's going to create a lot of legal issues too with the banks and their clients. So what do? You back the banks with some form of legal, something, law, policy or something to actually guide them so that they will not be falling into this legal suit that people will. So on that, you can encourage the creation of, or the opening of this foreign currency and foreign.
What about the argument economically that as far as we're concerned, if that is encouraged, the opening of foreign currency accounts, etc., it is used for trading because of the extent at which the cedi is falling.
Yeah.
And so somebody may not be trading with it, but internally may be trading for profits.
Yeah, that's a lot of issue because
now it is more profitable in the long term to trade in foreign currency than even trading in the normal instruments we
Obviously, yes, because if I have a dollar, I can make 2 cedis. So I'll prefer to trade in the dollar than to trade in the cedi. And a lot of people are also talking about this alternative market that will be created, the black market, because if restrict me from opening.
How true is that?
Obviously, it's happening, not even because of this. That market is there.
We know the areas where the Goro boys and the black marketeers are. So we just go there.
You can't just go there because
and go and have a soup on them. Use the police and the other tax force agents and go and have a soup.
You can't really do that. Such markets are very, very difficult to monitor. It's very, very difficult. That's why they say they need the support of the security service to really enforce some of these laws. But I think some of the areas, some of the things that are very vivid, you can see that when I go here, I know these people are dealing with dollars, which they are not supposed to do. So these people, I can enforce the law on them. You understand? And those are the people who are involved in the huge trade in terms of currency. So you take the big hotels, you take the big retail shops, you go there, they are quoting their goods in dollars and what have you. These are places that they are there. You can just go to them and enforce the law on them. Because these are the people who are involved in the huge trading in terms of currency. But the black market, you can control, actually really curb the incidence of all the growing of black market in your system, because you can't even identify where they are to be able to actually arrest them or whatever. If you arrest them here, they'll go to the next place. So that's basically very, but you can monitor a lot of sectors, a lot of areas, and enforce these policies on them. And from there, we move on. Yeah.
The increment of the base rate by some 200 points to 18%, what usually is the rationale for it?
Yeah, the rationale in terms of what we are seeing now. Yeah,
because we're having the depreciation in the city, and so the Bank of Ghana takes a step, and that has been prior advised by known economists around the world who have been having a lot more monitoring of economies in Africa, and these had been advised.
Yeah, the rationale is that when I increase my interest rate to 80%, has been done in the country now. It means that I'm putting a lot of confidence in the city. It means that when people bring and invest their money in the city, the rate that you're supposed to get is going to go up. So it's going to increase the people's appetite for savings or investment in the Ghanaian city, in the Ghanaian economy, and for that matter, Ghanaian city. That's the rationale. You understand? So if I was saving at 16%, now I'm supposed to save at 18%. So it means that my saving interest is going to go up by 2%. So I'll bring more money. So the supply side will be coming. That's the supply side. Only the supply side that will be coming. So a lot of money will be coming to the Ghana system to invest, to save, to invest, and then we make a lot of money from it. So the foreign money will come. They will save in the Ghana city. They will demand Ghana city in the return of their interest, and then we move on. So the demand of the Ghana city will start shooting up. Because if you bring your money and you want to invest, probably you have to invest in the Ghana city. So demand more Ghana cities, and then we move on. So that's the rationale. Of course, if negative effect on the the system trickling down is something that we know. The cost of borrowing is obviously going to go up, but that's the cost that we have to bear. I think some of these decisions are
in the short term.
In the short term. In the short term.
So supposing we have a lot more businesses, especially medium to small scale enterprises that are very dependent on loans or other loan portfolios before they survive. What should be the remedies that need to be taken by way of policy to perhaps cushion them?
The best remedy is to reduce the rate, but that cannot be done in the next 1 month or two, or the next by the close of the quarter or whatever. I think this regulation, I read that is supposed to be in for about 3 months or so. Although at the discretion of the governor of Bank, they can extend this directive. But I think, of course, the interest have gone up as high as 20% before, and it came down to 16%. So, of course, it's something that can be brought back. So, for the interim, I don't think something concrete can be done. All they have to do is maybe borrow at that high cost, and the price of goods will go up. Inflation go up. We're talking about 13.5%. So, we should be expecting increase in the price. Yeah. So, things will start going up, and we better price. Yeah.
So, as far as on the demand side, for the consumables and for we're likely to see an increase in consumer inflation.
Yeah, of course. We are likely to see an increase in the price.
What is the negative repercussion?
It means that your purchasing power will go down if you are supposed to buy. If you are, as at currently, you are able to buy, let's say, 10 items from your salary. Obviously, you're expecting to buy like 6 or 7 items from that same amount, unless there's an increment in your. And then, of course, we are talking about this possible freezing of some public sectors, their salary. I think the finance minister made mention of that, and that also caused a lot of outcry in the media. I think from the TUC, from trade unions, and a lot of workers' unions, they are saying that that's not good, especially from the public sector, trying to freeze salary, looking at this high rate of inflation in the system, where even the things that I'm able to buy, I can't buy them the next few months, and you still want to freeze my salary. It means that you are just ripping it off. I think that's a challenge that we need to actually look at.
If you take a look at what the figures are, our current account as a country is in a bad shape. What does it mean?
Yeah, we are in a deficit. Of course, it means that we import more than we export. And even the little that we export, the prices are coming down because we are commodity driven. You export gold, you're expecting to get 2 billion, you get 1.5 billion. Even the 2 billion you're supposed to get was not enough. You understand? You're supposed to get some money in the form of aid or grant from your development partners. You are short of it because their system too is going down. There are so many global economic shocks that whatever affects the U.S. economy affects Ghana, obviously, because we are linked. The amount of money you get from them is very huge. You understand? So what you do, what you see is that as this economic shock also affects your system, then you go down. Let's say, for instance, all these things are something that we need to look at. That's why I'm saying that if you're able to build your internal structure very strong, as we are seeing now, which has been experienced in the last few years, and then the last decade across Sub-Saharan Africa. This is the time we need to take some bold decisions. Look at Ghana, for instance. 2012, I think most of our current deficit was something that we overlooked. It's more of the money that we're supposed to get from these people, from the development partner, in the form of aid. They call it grant. We're not in as was because of the 2012. There was U.S. shutdown. There were so many European.
So they did the promises all right.
Yeah, but the money couldn't come because this is taxpayers' money of these people.
So what happened? So we looked internally to fund.
How do you do that? Look, let's even look at the background of this grant that we receive from these people. Look, it's more of a duplication of what happened in the Europe during the 1948. That was the post-World War II. There was this thing that they call European Recovery Program. What they did was that now a lot of these European countries are coming from this war. They are broken, they are fragmented. So America decided to put certain money there for these people to access to develop internally their structure. So when you get to a certain level, then you can actually look internally to generate your own money. They did that and it helped them. It worked for them. So what did they do? The 1960 states, as Ghana started the road trip of getting independent across the Sub-Saharan, like across Africa. So what did they do? And let's try to replicate the same or the model in Africa. That's what they call the aid model, or the grant, as people say, from development partners, whatever. It's aid money. They are coming to support you. Their taxpayers' money they are going to use to support your budget or whatever you are doing. So what did they instead this aid model? What it meant was that as the same as the 1940s, while the Europeans were coming from this World War II. So Africa, a lot of people are coming from independent. They are very, very fragile, very, very fragmented. They are not strong economic. There are no system in place. So let's put aid money there. The money will support investment, and the investment will drive development, and the poverty will reduce. That was the model. There was no savings was supposed to be first. drive investment, development, and then poverty will come down. But as at then, there were no appetite for there's no money for even people to save. So they replaced this grant or aid money in place of this savings. Then this aid money will drive investment, drive growth, and then reduce poverty. We've practiced this for over 50 to 60 years now. What do we see? Before then, before the starting of this aid money or whatever, or this grant, 10% of Africans were very poor and died poverty. Now it's about 60%. So what happened? It means that policy, the European recovery policy, that was being used in Africa in terms of this aid money.
So what should be the new paradigm shift?
The new paradigm shift is that, what it means that the poorer you are as a country, the more money you get. So Ghana moved from lower middle income or like less developing country to lower middle income status. It means that the amount of money we were getting some years back will not be the same amount of money we are. If you were getting 10 million then, now you need to get about 7 or 6 million, because it assumes you are developing internally. So you should have the means to generate your money internally. You understand? So we see that across sub-Saharan Africa, which of course a lot of countries, we are seeing that a lot of this money were used to sponsor bureaucracy, to curtail political power. So they will remain poor. So as they remain poor, a lot of this money will come in, and the poorer they will get, because these political leaders or elites will just use all the money. So that's what we are seeing now. So what do you see in the next 10 years? Ghana is going to move forward to a certain level. So this is where the forecast is very, very important. So we know ahead in the next 10 years, I think that this money we are getting will not come in. So what do? We develop an internal strategy. We're able to generate our money internally. And that we have to be very careful.
So which strategy do we need to develop?
Yeah, so you talk about this, you talk about pushing up your export. Try to look at ways and means to actually export more to earn more foreign earnings. Then you move forward.
We have to break the trade deficit, yes.
Yeah, you understand. And then look at this tax issue that we all see. Because a lot of us in this part of the world are being supported generally by the tax revenue. We take a lot of taxes to be able to move on. That's our number one priority in terms of raising money internally. So how do you do that? Do you just target a particular sector and think that this sector is moving forward, so I should tax them? Because it's very easy. I have a problem with most of our tax systems we are having now. You see that it's very, very easy to target some sectors. So what do? You see a lot of tax being pushed on these sectors.
So you're saying what?
Ignoring a lot of people or a lot of...
So we need to expand?
Widen it.
Okay, so while we widen the tax net, how do we make sure that the various economic sectors are able to come to the level at which they could be?
So, like I say, tax is one.
Taxed.
Yeah, tax is one of it, and then look at developing your private sector as well, because this way you're going to tax a lot. So, if your private sector able to exist, you'll be able to. You have a lot of private development going on, then you can tax them, because obviously that's where a lot of taxes are going to come from. So, unless you build the internal structure to make sure that no private development is actually ongoing, then you can talk of generating a lot of money internally. Look at capital markets as well. Look at how to attract a lot of investments into the economy too as well. So all these are things that we can do to make sure that we do not fall short of this crisis that we are seeing, trying to make sure that we be able to adjust our economy.
If you look at, let's say, the investment report, for example, there's a lot of capital inflow in agriculture. Is this skewed or perhaps not to the level at which we need to have it?
Yeah, I think it's not to the level at which we need to actually have this investment. Of course, a lot of this investment are talking about agro processing, so they were trying to add value to some of the things that. So a lot of people will come, they get a large plot of land, they cultivate cassava and then process it to starch and sell it to these brewery companies, which of course is in a way violent than the traditional cassava cultivation, where you produce the cassava in the raw form and then people will come and buy, take it outside, process it to starch and bring it back to the country. That's obviously wrong. So I think a lot of money is coming in there, but not at the way that's been expected. I think if you have this arable land, look, there's this thing that's going on, like they call land grab. It's actually a term that they used to describe how people are actually grabbing to get land in Africa. Because look, when you take China, it's about 1.something billion people. The land there is very, very limited. They don't have access to arable land. Land that I can, even in this room, I can just make some growing of this, some food stuff here and to grow. I'll get my money or I can feed my family. But when you go to China, it's not like that. So what do? They have to come to market where they can have access to land, actually viable land that they can actually grow their goods. So all these people are coming into this part of our world. So this is the time that I think policy must work. So when you bring your money, you want to go into the agriculture sector, there must be a direction. Look, as a policy, as managers of the economy, this is our policy. If you want to invest, depending on the amount of money you want to invest,
agriculture,
this is the side of agriculture we want you to go. Fish farming, poultry, what have you, cassava. There must be a policy. You can't just bring your money and come and invest. We cannot we couldn't take such decision in the last 10 years because we were not strong. I can just take my money away to any part of the world and I can make returns on it. But now I know that no matter where you go, you cannot make the return that you make in this country. That's why I can enforce my policies. So if at first I couldn't tell you that when you bring your money, take it to the cotton sector, produce only cotton, then I couldn't say that, because if I say produce only cotton, you can just take your money to any part. You can just take your money to any part of the world and can
maybe you
invest.
Can take it to Benin or you can take it to
you know that
Zimbabwe,
when I take it, I can make the same returns on my money. So why should I even worry myself? If I'm not interested in cotton, why should I come and invest in cotton? But now it's not the same.
The managers of the economy know that.
I'm sure they know.
Yeah.
The numbers,
since you know, they know.
Yeah, of course. I read the numbers from the aside from.
So once you make the comparative analysis, you get to know that they know that. Okay, now, how do we move this country to the next level? And then what sacrifices are we likely going to see? Or what will be the opportunity cost, so to speak, in terms of the economic terms?
Yeah, I think that the next thing that we need to look at is our growth structure, how robust we are growing. That is something we should look at. And I think there's one major, it's a global thing and actually happening in some part of the world, which didn't help. That's what you call inequality, economic or income inequality. I've done a lot of research on that, where you see the numbers are going by, it's skewed towards about just 1% at the top, and 99% below, very poor. So the growth, but it's not trickling down to the people. I think that is a major challenge that we should be thinking of as we are talking about this now, because some people didn't see that, and because of that they were hurt economically. Because at the end of the day, you saw the numbers growing, numbers increasing, but a lot of people were left out. So I think inclusive growth is a major thing that we look at.
Meaning
so
what?
It means that a lot of people should be involved in the growth. The people. So what are the sectors that you think will involve a lot of people?
Okay.
So because of that, you direct your policies.
Okay, Mr. Frimpong. What sense does it make if farmers are still undertaking their business in smallholder entities, not in large plantation acreages, and in the mining sector we still have galamsey operations that are distorting the normal growth and exploration rates, and we still have a large part of the economy still in the hands of multinationals who usually tend to remit their profits out of the country. I mean, because you are talking about a certain line of growth. Yeah.
What I'm trying to say is that if you want to make the growth meaningful in the lives of people, you need to involve them in the growth process, both in the production of the growth.
Because we've always been involved in the growth process, that's why.
Yeah, but it's not as it's supposed to be, looking at the current rate of growth. Then it could be normal, I mean, if a lot of farmers are there. And look, small-scale farmers, that's not what we need now. In fact, some other countries, just about 2% of people are involved in farming, but they produce and...
Yes, in America, 3% were being told, according to the report.
Involved in agriculture, it doesn't mean that a lot of people should be, when they say a lot of people should invest, like you should invest in agriculture, it doesn't mean that a lot of people should be involved in the agriculture sector. Look,
it's just that the quantum of investment
should be high. And with that, because if only 3% are involved,
there should be a consistent effort to make it a high growth sector.
Okay. But if only 3%, like for America, for instance, if only 3% are involved in the production of all these goods that they export to other countries, you see, just only 3%. But from the production, so the time it gets to any part of, that's where a lot of people are involved in.
Okay.
You understand? So a lot of people will be living the normal small scale.
So we have main farmers 3, but we have the other secondary
agriculture related activities that can involve a lot of people. Agribusiness, that involve a lot of people. So that's
and that also should transcend to the oil sector.
Yeah, the oil sector, because the oil sector is very, very critical, because not a lot of people will be involved in the oil sector. Of course, we all know that it's very, very skilled, and if you don't have
so then where should the people-centeredness be?
People-centered in the oil sector is very, very difficult, because you can't really get a lot of people in that sector. But what you do is that the money from there should be directed towards sector that you think a lot of people will be involved, and then move on from there. But talking about the challenge we won't have to bear, I think we are always seeing it. I mean, high cost of goods and services that we have to pay for, salaries of workers not moving up, and purchasing power coming down. I think these are our challenges that we need to face. But I hope that we could see a lot of more concrete economic policies going forward, and we can take it from there.
As economic watchers, did you see this coming?
Yes, some of us, after studying some economists, you understand, my particular concern has got to do with not even with this CD thing that we are all seeing, but a lot of issues that I talked about, basically about this inclusive growth that we have. It's something that we need to really look at. That's what I'm saying. So when I look to the economic numbers, that's where my fear is. How we able to make sure that this growth, this numbers that we have, not only is because I don't do only on the city or currency to actually make my projection. I look at number of factors. After looking through these numbers, that's the conclusion I've made, that we need to make sure that we tackle this inclusiveness of our growth, and from there we make it forward. Yeah.
And so the policy watchers need to critically look at all these. I miss a lot of demands from various sectors currently. Workers are threatening that they would want increment in wages. There are investments that need to be made in critical areas like health, roads, etc. Basic infrastructure as well. And these necessarily may not always feed into the mainstream economy in the short term.
Yeah. Obviously, in terms of this workers' issue, this agitation that we are all having, we are all seeing happening every month, I think, being threatened by lay off of workers and other stuff. I think that there is something that we should all appreciate, because, you see, it should be clear to us for now that government cannot employ all people in this country. That's something that we should all appreciate.
So you said Ghanaians should empathize?
Yeah, of course. We need to bear
and if the government doesn't want to go out of power too?
Of course, you need to respond to some of these issues and make sure you can settle them.
Anyway, we don't want to speak to the politics of the economics. We have had a very fruitful discussion this morning. I've really particularly enjoyed, I think, the best economics lecture I've had on this very subject of the city in the last couple of days. Courtesy the gentleman in the studio, he always is undertaking business intelligence reports, and so just monitoring variables, economic variables, the figures, etc., and trying to do some comparative analysis with countries that we have in the sub-region, and particularly the wider African region. We have chartered economist Paul Frimpong helping us this morning with our discussion on particularly new directives given by the city, by the Bank of Ghana on the city. And so that'll be it for the morning. Thanks for joining me. I hope to have you again sometime in the studio.
Sure.
That'll be it for AM Talk. Next, we'll bring you the latest news highlights we have on the hour.